The way we pay for things has dramatically changed. From swiping your phone for a cup of coffee to jumping out of a taxi without reaching for your wallet. As with most things these days, AI is playing its part, though not in the ways you might expect. It's helping detect fraud, but also causing it too. And going forward, the way we pay for things will only become more invisible and integrated into our experiences, like a car that can pay for gas or electric charging all on its own. Throughout this series, we'll be featuring the stories of breakthroughs and other key moments in emerging tech, as told by those who witnessed them. I'm Jennifer Strong, and this is Shift.
Now here on the steering column is a device called Auto Cruise. You simply set the speed you want.
Self-driving robo-taxis are already on the road in
As the disc rotates, a mirror reflects the light in the way that depends on how the signal was recorded.
This is the 100 terabyte. I present to you Electro, the Moto Man.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
This episode, it's the latest installment of our oral history project.
It does sometimes feel like it's just bots fighting bots out there. So there's a little bit of an arms race, right? Tools or weapons. Ed McLaughlin, I'm the President and Chief Technology Officer of Mastercard. What we do at Mastercard is we run a global payments network. So our job is to connect consumers and businesses and everyone together and really enable commerce to happen. So we're in 210 countries and domiciles around the world. We have over 100 million merchants which are connected to our network and about 3.5 billion consumer accounts. So what we do is we run all the technology to make it work. So you can get on a plane, land anywhere in the world, and know your MasterCard is going to get you to your hotel and let you do whatever it is you want to do. And alongside with that, we run a lot to protect the network, to make sure that it's safe and secure, to fight fraud, and to really add a lot of value to consumers with loyalty programs and other things. So while MasterCard's not the financial institution, we don't hold the money, we don't lend the money, we have the network that makes all the payments work. Payments have changed tremendously across our time here at MasterCard. And if you think about when we started, everything was really in the physical world. People were using cash or checks, and what was new was paying with plastic, was introducing an electronic payment device. And the way I used to think of the plastic card is that was sort of a access token to our network that we'd put in your pocket, that you could go to a specialized terminal, to read the card and make the transaction happen. And that worked incredibly well for the network. And I think it goes back to 1973 when we first started putting mag stripes on charge plates to make it happen. But the subsequent technological revolutions and how we were able to take advantage of it was absolutely amazing. So if you think of moving to first wave internet and then to mobile and then the digital native environments we're in, successive changes in technology have allowed us to reach and serve all sorts of new people, all sorts of new types of commerce that we never could before. So really, I think the big step forward was when we first started doing e-commerce, where we were freed from the physical world and we could let people directly interact with the network through browsers and online. And then the next big wave was with mobile. And a lot of the foundational work we did with Google and Apple to enable secure digital commerce on mobile phones, opening up transit systems around the world so people could just tap their phone to get on their morning commute. You can see this evolution as more and more cash shifted out of the systems and people came over to electronic payments because they were better. They were more convenient. They were more rewarding for people. And we're seeing more and more of that now as what we call contextual commerce, where we're embedding it into bigger environments. So the experience of getting out of a Lyft or an Uber and it's already paid for. We have one I'm really happy about that we just did with Mercedes, where from your car at, I think it's about 3,600 gas stations in Germany, in your car itself, you can pull up to a gas pump, light it up through your car system and get your fuel. We're doing a lot with electronic charging and other things. So the idea that payments becomes an ingredient for all kinds of consumer experiences, just like we're using AI to make sure that we can detect and combat fraud in our network, the fraudsters are using it to automate attacks, to be much more sophisticated in how they're going after it. So we'll see things like, we call them tumbler attacks, where they're just taking information that they've gotten and they're testing it. And in very, very automated ways and coming at you at low levels, they can just keep trying testing and probing the network. So with that automation, we have to be equally sophisticated in picking up these needle in the haystack, low-level attacks. Another big one, though, is more of the social engineering side. And we're seeing this in scams that are playing out in markets around the world, where they'll use AI through impersonation, through personalization of the attack. So you normally wouldn't click on that link in the email, but it looks like it's crafted from information that was publicly available around you. They used AI to assemble in an automated way. So we're seeing much more sophisticated ways we're trying to craft impersonation exploits against people to get their credential information to then come in and use it for an exploit. So that's why our generative AI, new techniques that we put into the network are so important. We can look at all the merchants that would be available to you and which were you most likely to shop with and pick up things which are unlikely in sophisticated new ways. So even if someone gets a fully validated credential from you through an AI-based social engineering, we can still detect anomalies if your pattern changes, quickly in the system. So yeah, the ways that AI can be used to craft new and novel exploits, we constantly have to counter and keep up with. And one massive shift I'll point to, and I know it's top of everyone's mind, is how we've been able to apply AI to the network. So if you go back maybe a dozen years, much of what we did to fight fraud was rules-based. We'd know certain things which indicated it was fraud, and we'd hold the transactions or investigate transactions based on it. And at the time, it did a pretty good job in stopping the type of fraud that was out there. Well, as fraud became much more sophisticated, as the networks became much more faster, and as things became much more digital, the profile changed. And it's really when we started using artificial intelligence, simple neural networks to begin combating that potential for fraud in a new way. And when you fast forward to how we're doing AI today, we have this in-memory grid system we call it our decision management platform, that has over 1 trillion parameters in it. So it's one of the larger AI models really in the world that's out there. And we use that in 50 milliseconds or less to score every transaction that's coming through the network. So now we can do things like have a circuit breaker. We call it safety net, where if we see a runaway fraud problem, we can stop it before a human could even get a page that something bad was going on. We have what we call decision intelligence, where we look at all of these analytical vectors. We apply a lot of both machine learning and then some generative techniques like a recursive neural network against it to determine the likelihood that this is a good transaction. And let me put that in material like real world terms. So in the last 12 months, we've stopped over $20 billion worth of fraud with our AI systems. And that's the hard dollar fraud we stopped. That's not the potential fraud if, that had worked or the exploits could have happened through the network. So it's doing an amazing job of preventing fraud from happening. But the best part is, particularly as we started using some of the more sophisticated techniques, we were able to take more and more false positives out of the system. So with some of our new decision intelligence capabilities, we're stopping 20 and then sometimes up to 300% better detection of fraud. But the amazing thing was we had an 85% reduction in false positives. So that is you trying to do what you wanted to do, and now we can make sure that it works for you. So the systems aren't in your way, but they're actually protecting you better. So it has been just absolutely transformative as we get to real-time payments through APIs with these sophisticated AI systems as opposed to the old rules-based system that we can use to make sure everyone using the network is safer. for both the fraud and the security side, there's many things that we're working on. One of which is a lot of advances in encryption and encryption techniques. So we make sure that all the data in our network, as it moves through the network, things that we hold at rest are fully encrypted, and we're continuing to strengthen that. Some of the things we've been working on lately have been looking at how quantum techniques could really both be used to make our network more secure or create new and novel attack vectors against it. In the industry, people talk about Q day. And if you ever hear that, that's when quantum techniques can be used to really break a lot of the encryptions we're using today. So, brief technological digression. A lot of the encryption that protects the entire internet, protects a lot of the Mastercard systems, is based on solving really hard mathematical problems. But I would say it's a hard mathematical problem for classic computer systems. There's certain algorithms and techniques, one it's called Shor's algorithm, for example, that can solve that hard problem much faster on a quantum computer. So there is a risk eventually, as general purpose quantum computing becomes available, that the underlying encryption techniques we're using today could be easily solved or invalidated. So we've been doing work both to have more powerful encryption techniques that are quantum resistant, using those in our network, so we're already ready for it before that advance is going to get here. And then we did a really amazing thing working with partners like Verizon and Cisco on what's called quantum key distribution, where if you remember your favorite like spy novel where they'd have the one-time pad, which is how you could be really secure because there's no problem to solve, there's no riddle in the encryption, it really is a random number. We can actually use quantum entanglement to put random numbers as the keys across the network. So anyone who intercepts the data can't decrypt it by solving a problem because it really is based on a random key. So the security of the distribution actually changes the nature of the problem. So we're doing a lot of work to say, how can we apply the research that's out there in a very practical way to the networks we're running today, so we're ready for what we can see coming next. And there's one other really important thing that I want to talk about with this. It's the only AI has to be ethical AI. And this is something that's very, very important to us. We were honored to be a founding member of the Harvard Kennedy School Council for Ethical Use of AI. We've said that everything digital, I think, has to be profoundly based on trust of consumers. So they have to trust we're looking after them. That's where the zero liability, that's where all the investments we make in the security of our network come in. You have to trust who you're doing business with. You have to trust that we're looking out for your best interests. So we published a Consumer Data Bill of Rights, that your data is your data. You have the right to know what we know about you. You have the right to be forgotten. We will only use that data to make the services we provide for you better and not sell it to other people for other purposes. That's the foundation of digital trust. And then you have to trust the reliability, that it'll work for you every time, everywhere, so the resilience in the network itself. So I think trust is going to become incredibly and progressively important as these powerful new tools and techniques and as people are using data in new ways that are out there. So we're trying very hard to make sure everyone who's working with Mastercard understands exactly what we're doing with AI, how we're applying it to the networks, and how we're using the underlying data.
This episode was produced by me and Emma Silikins and mixed by Garrett Lang, with original music from him and Jacob Gorski. Thanks for listening. I'm Jennifer Strong.